Is there anything in this life that will truly last? Is there nothing that's deathless, nothing which will not pass away? In 2011, auteur director Terrence Malick released his magnum opus, a film that the late Roger Ebert called a form of prayer. Combining his philosophical education with his passion for filmmaking, Malick composes a beautiful tapestry of life as it is, a rich mosaic of memories and metaphor, an elegant dance of dreams with divinity. Many characterize it as a search for meaning, a search for being, and a search for the God in between. But this wonder and awe for love and life is contrasted with an emotionally violent war between a mother and a father over the souls of their sons. And while no blood is shed, the war is fought across dinner tables and patches of grass. Kent Jones in his Criterion essay writes, quote, "Everything is allowed to speak. The wind, the lighting of a candle, a meteor crashing to earth, a newborn baby's moving arms and legs, a parched front lawn, the body of a drowned boy, a father's sudden self-reckoning, the beginning of life and the end of time. Each image speaks the awe-inspiring mystery of its own existence and radiates and resounds in harmony with the question, what is this? Somewhere between darkness and light, earth and heaven, chaos and creation, science and religion, death and life, doubt and faith, father and mother, the way of nature and the way of grace is where we will find the tree of life." Welcome to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, where we analyze stories and films that help us make sense of life. We are four friends with backgrounds in storytelling, filmmaking, teaching, and narrative therapy. Join us on our quest towards telling and living our stories more meaningfully. I'm Derek Hatch.
My name is Nick Natat.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Wilson.
I'm Jason Lynn.
All right, guys, we are at the end of this season of this podcast. It is the end of 2024. We are heading towards the holidays. And what better time to talk about religion? It's on many people's minds, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to choose a film that's really special to me, but it's probably the least accessible film I've chosen for this podcast. You know, I've chosen Star Wars, Dune, Logan, Pinocchio.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And this is definitely like something that I think stands very differently from a lot of what I
think your Pinocchio falls a little on this side.
Yeah.
More so than Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in terms of like the metaphysical journey, right? This is like a very, like an art house kind of film.
Very artsy. It feels
Yes.
very artsy.
And I'm glad you're seeing this side of me because there's a lot of these films I could pick, but I won't do that to you. But I have to do this one for reasons here.
Nancy said you pick weird movies, Derek.
Me?
Artsy's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Artsy isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny.
Well, I mean, like, even like Mr. Smith and Tree of Life, like Mr. Smith is a very like Frank Capra, like traditional Hollywood kind of film.
Mm-hmm.
This is like an independent art house, not mainstream at all commercial film.
Yeah.
I saw this, in fact, it was a small independent theater in La Jolla. Shout out to California.
Shout outs.
And there was only one other person there. It was an old couple there. One of them walked out and did not come back. The other one fell asleep in the theater. So it's just me and Tori.
Did Tori fall asleep?
No.
Okay.
She said this was like being in a museum for 3 hours. Being locked in a museum.
That's an awesome analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, here's the thing.
Works.
Yeah, it's cool.
At the time this came out, but even before it came out, I was saying, I think this is going to be a masterpiece. I saw it in the theater. One person walked out. One person fell asleep. I was like a lone person crying out, this movie's a masterpiece. Now, all of a sudden,
everybody's on that train.
All of a sudden, in the past years, everyone's come around to this film. Mm-hmm. But man, did it take a while. I felt like I was the only one out there who was saying this film is amazing.
It's like us in BVS, bro. It's understandable. Mm-hmm.
That one's cemented already as mid.
No, it's not mid. No.
Now, I know I said this about Pinocchio and Logan, but this is like another film that I would put as like one of my all-time favorite films. In fact, if you go on my Letterboxd top 4, you'll see that this is the third film on the podcast that we talked about. That's in my top 4. The fourth one, we're going to talk about next year. But yeah, so I would love to know, like, what are your kind of initial, I'm scared to ask, what are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts. where
I'm
this is the most beautiful slog I have ever seen.
That's fair.
In the beginning, it really caught me with the family and this boy navigating his childhood. Well, really, this man navigating his childhood as a boy and his thoughts, and the struggle between nature and grace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his mother and his father, and it was that really caught me.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, it was just like there's show and don't tell. And then
Yes.
there's show.
It's like Zack Snyder slow.
Wouldn't tell a little bit.
Yeah.
And show.
You're so stupid.
So one of the interesting things about Terrence Malick, Jason, is that he's figuring out what the movie he's creating is as he's creating it.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of this stuff is him figuring it out, like as he's making the movie and in the editing there.
So his aha moment came in the middle of the movie.
Well,
Sorry, I'm
Fair comments. No.
These are real questions.
because the thing is, for me, this movie is all these things. Like at a certain point, this is the slowest. Like I don't really want to watch this film at all. And then at another point, I do believe this film is a masterpiece as well. I think it's singular. It's no one has made anything like this.
Yeah.
Its ambition is so great and its scope is so big, and it pulls off things that are just incredible.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and it's also at times incredibly boring.
Yes.
Nick, would you say it's fair to say that this is almost the counterbalance to 2001: Space Odyssey?
Yeah.
Like in terms of the same kind of film, except it's the opposite perspective.
So singular, that you can put that film up there as well. Like the narrative and the script is very like sparse. It's very it's not about the screenplay.
No,
or
it's not.
Linear filmmaking. It's more of an experience.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a novel. This is a film.
Yes,
And
and
you
it can
experience this
only
as
be a film.
Yeah. So it's unique, it's beautiful, and it has a lot of depth. But it's also something I'm not going to run to watch.
Yeah.
Like I have to really commit and be in a certain kind of mood to sit down and give myself to this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think you see that this is a very slice of life kind of film, and it pushes that really hard. Like this is just trying to capture
slice
life.
of life and then cosmic at the same time.
Yes.
Very
Cosmic slice of life.
Yeah, like literally though, it's
Slice of the universe.
Yeah, a little slice of the universe.
Yeah. Brad Pitt described him, Terrence Malick, as a director who creates chaos on set in order to find what's true.
That's cool.
That's what he's after. And so he said that he's someone that is always searching and curious about life, the afterlife, and the meaning of what it means to be here right now. And I got to say, by the way, Brad Pitt gets the award for being most featured on this podcast this season.
Thank you.
He has been on this podcast, I think, 5 times, I think.
We got Fury.
Fury,
We got
Inglourious Bastards,
Tree of Life.
Tree of Life.
Look at context and phone book working together. Go ahead.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, we're stepping back on this one.
Fight Club.
Fight Club, yes.
So he's been featured at least 4 times on this podcast. So, and he wasn't even meant to be in the movie.
Whoa, really?
He was a producer, and the guy who originally had the part dropped out at the last minute. And Terrence Malick said, "Hey, can you just be the dad?" He's like, "Sure."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really becomes a dad that I'm just like it becomes personal.
Yeah,
It hurts.
becomes very personal.
And so before we dive into Letterboxd here, if you have not checked out this film, I highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're into these conversations about religion, spirituality, God, the theological. There is a really beautiful Criterion release that you can get on Blu-ray and DVD. But I can't recommend this film enough, especially if you want something a little more different, a little more art house. You know, I despite being a Christian, I'm not a fan of Christian movies like God's Not Dead and all that kind of garbage that's out there. And so for me, it offers a rich engagement in conversations about God and theological topics, but also with filmmaking excellence that you just aren't going to find in those other films. I mean, this really is something special, like 2001: Space Odyssey levels of greatness. So let's go ahead and get into the Letterboxd, and then we'll get right into this here.
Letterboxd.
everything stands still. The impressionistic story of a Texas family in the 1950s. The film follows the life journey of the eldest son, Jack, through the innocence of childhood to his disillusioned adult years, as he tries to reconcile a complicated relationship with his father. Jack finds himself a lost soul in the modern world, seeking answers to the origins and meaning of life while questioning the existence of faith.
Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determines the measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretches the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
So that's the opening verses that are given when the movie starts. And then there's a shot of this light in the darkness that I believe is like representing God, divinity, like the highest thing, the light in the darkness.
It started reminding me of the burning bush.
Yes.
When I start to like pick up of what this movie's trying to tell, I'm like, okay, that's like a burning fire and a burning bush and stuff like that.
Right. So the Tree of Life is using, and you see it in the opening scene, it's setting it up here. It's using a structure of storytelling called Sparklines. So we've talked about the hero's journey. In a lot of our movies, this is not using the hero's journey. It's using a sparkline structure. So what a sparkline structure does is it contrasts two different perspectives or two different ways of life. Do the Right Thing is, in a sense, a sparkline story, as we're getting Sal's point of view, Mookie's point of view, right? That would fall under this structure. Tree of Life is doing the same thing by contrasting in the opening scene the way of nature versus the way of grace.
Fan of this structure. Way more than the hero's journey for me.
Interesting. How come?
Because I like the tension between this, and there's usually a truth in that tension.
Yes, that's what it's wrestling with. And the ultimate question is, which path will Jack choose? Or which aspects of those ways is he going to take with him moving forward?
Yeah.
What is the relationship between these two things? She says in that opening, way of grace doesn't want to please itself, and nature does. That nature only wants to please itself. No one who ever loves grace will come to a bad end. And then she has that line, the final line of that opening monologue is, I will be true to you, whatever comes. So these are like prayers that her and other characters are giving with these voiceovers. This is something Terrence Malick actually uses in a lot of his films. Kind of feels like a novel because you're getting inside their heads. And it's when that line is delivered that she receives the letter about her son dying back in Nam.
Yeah, back in Nam, bro.
So the scene of Jessica Chastain and Brad Pitt, by the way, their names are Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien. So I'll refer to them as that also. But there's a scene of them walking together and they can't keep pace. They're walking in different paces and they're in silence. And the dad just kind of tries to meet her at her pace, puts the hand on her shoulder there. And you see these images of like the dad just praying, the mom is wandering. We're just very lost when we start this movie because we start really big and now we're brought down to earth with this smack dab of reality that they've just lost their child. And then you get, this is almost like a short film within the movie where we get like, almost like Job, like the story of Job is playing out. So you guys see like how there's friends that are like trying to comfort them.
Oh, you know, the Lord giveth and he taketh away.
That woman was,
yes.
Yeah, it's
everything that you don't want to hear in the moment.
Yes.
Like she almost went down the list.
Yep.
Just like,
but it's very believable, right?
Yep, it is.
People, I don't know if you guys have had people who have died, but I mean, I've heard stuff like that. I've said stuff like that, unfortunately.
They're in a better place, so you know.
Yeah.
You don't worry about it.
But man, she said all of them.
Yeah.
She didn't just go say one or two. She's just like kept going.
Yeah.
There's also a shot of somebody.
You still have two others.
Yes. There's also a shot of someone from the neighborhood just giving them a casserole and then walking away. I thought that was interesting too. Like, here's something I have, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Just really interesting.
Even the father's reaction when like people are trying to like comfort her, it's like we're all right. She's all right.
Yeah, well, in the mom's face as she's hearing this, she's not lashing out, but you could tell she's like almost mortified at some of this stuff that she's saying.
Yeah.
And the music that's being used in all this Job stuff, it's requiems, which is like funeral music. So it's getting us to kind of confront this grief and this death. And the composer who was putting all the music together for this film, some of it he created, some of it is famous classical pieces. He said that he describes requiems as like mourning within memory. And that's really key here, because after this little Job sequence, we get older Jack, played by Sean Penn. He wakes up, which implies that what we're seeing, Jack is experiencing. So this is something that I did not get on the first watch of the movie.
Yeah.
But the movie we're watching is actually what is happening with Jack. And I'll get into that in a second. But basically, when he wakes up, he lights a candle in his like really decked out modern home, very cold feeling. He lights a candle and you see that there's like something that he's trying to connect with. He's surrounded by artificial nature, concrete, jungle. It's what man creates, and it's void of the creation that we're going to see spill out in the rest of this movie here. Yeah. Then there's shots of his brother. So his brother's name, the blonde-haired brother, his name's Arl. So Arl is Arl, yeah. So Arl is shown in the water, like almost like a baptism, like a cleansing, like he's found something. And then the next shot is Jack, or adult Jack, in a dry desert with no water in sight. So this is all like symbolic storytelling here of these images. And we kind of have to see, what is Malick trying to say by putting these images here together? And then he's surrounded by people literally like wearing masks around him as he laments that the world has gone to the dogs. Then he looks at a tree. He finds the one piece of nature in all this artificial, and he looks at the tree and he says, "How did I lose you?" Then it shows him back in the desert, and he's found dirty like water, and he's trying to cleanse his face. He's trying to wash his face with this really dirty water. And then it shows him in a garden trying to connect with like, there's like this butterfly flying around him, which is a setup for a shot later with his mom and the butterfly. All this to say is that this is a movie where, again, show versus tell. And like, you really have to look at like, what is this image and this image? Why is Malick putting them side by side? What's he trying to get at here? What's he after? And the big thing to really understand this film is that this movie is almost like a series or an extended, like a dream vision of like when in Job, when God takes Job on a tour throughout the universe, this is what's happening to adult Jack.
Yeah.
God is taking adult Jack on a journey through the cosmos and through his life, in answer to his prayer of his longing of what he's trying to find there. This is ultimately a movie about the search for meaning. Jack isn't going to get all the answers, but he gets all the puzzle pieces, and he has to try to make sense of it, right? Which is what I think what God does in our lives is God gives us the Bible. God gives us these experiences, but we really have to figure out like, what is he trying to say through this?
Yeah.
And we have to wrestle with it. And I just really relate to how torn the character feels, trying to reach out to God, wondering if he's actually there answering. I mean, that's so much of my journey with God as well. And just trying to reconcile the different views I might have of God that come from different places. And so this kind of wandering existentialism is just something that I've had moments of my life where I've just really been in this season. And kind of like Jack here, I've had these dreams and different things where God has taken me through my memories of my story. And that's the understanding I get of my story. It really comes what God has revealed to me. And there was a dream that someone actually had about me where God reached into my head and pulled out all these different puzzle pieces representing different moments of my life. And I was trying to like put all these pieces together, try to make sense of it, like telling my story. And God holds up all the pieces and said, all of this is mine. And that's kind of what I feel like when I'm watching this film. When I'm watching Tree of Life, it's like God is holding up all the pieces of Jack's life and saying, all of this is mine. And all of this represents the tree of your life. And I think that's what Malick is ultimately doing, is that this is him trying to wrestle with these ideas and helping us as the audience to wrestle with them too. So yeah. And it's funny because the Tree of Life, it's in a sense the ultimate narrative therapy movie, because like with narrative therapy, as practitioners, we're trying to take people through a journey of their lives. We're trying to assemble these fragmented pieces, and we're trying to help people make sense of it and see what's the narrative unfolding here. And there actually is a narrative practice called the Tree of Life. It isn't based on the film. It has nothing to do with it, but it's really interesting to tie in here because it's detailed in a book called Collective Narrative Practice by David Denborough. And the Tree of Life is a practice. I've actually done it with students.
Really?
I've done it with students at Urban Youth and lots of places, adults as well. But the Tree of Life is basically where it's an art project where you create a tree that represents your life, your story.
I've seen you do this.
Yeah. So you start from the bottom of the roots of where you come from, and you go all the way to the top where you finish with the fruit that your life is bearing, right? Every part of the tree has some sort of meaning, some sort of symbolism. And so kind of like this movie, everything is intentional. Everything matters. And for those who listening there, if you want to learn more about narrative therapy practices, the Tree of Life, these different things, if you want to do a workshop, go ahead and check out the link here for All Things Narrative. And this is what I do, as I love helping people to make sense of their story. And so if you want to try the Tree of Life exercise, either individually or with a group, then let's connect, and feel free to set up a consultation in the link below.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Genesis 1:1-3. This is probably the most controversial section of the film. A lot of people think that this should be cut from the movie because you have 20 minutes of a prologue, and then you get to this 20-minute sequence of the creation of the universe. What did you guys think of this? What was this experience like watching it?
It felt like I started watching a documentary on Discovery Channel at that point, which I vibe with, so I was fine. I was fine at that part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. It was enjoyable.
It was. And funny enough, we're talking about the universe that God shows, like a little tidbit of thing that I found out. A lot of the special effects that like the universe scenes or the cosmic scenes were actually like liquids and paints and lights and glasses and containers. The director did not want to use any type of CGI. So I think like even the planets, like pictures of the planets, those are like, I guess like satellites, something.
NASA lent them some stuff, for this.
So all those visual effects are real things, and like they're slowed down, so like it's a like a greater effect. So I thought that, like, I love that stuff, man. So a very organic effect.
So the guy who did that they got in is a guy named Douglas Trump. He came out of retirement to make this sequence, and you might have known 3 maybe lesser known films that he did. The first one, 2001: Space Odyssey. He was the head of special effects for that. He also did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he also did the original Blade Runner.
That sucks.
So this might be the most pioneering person besides Lucas's team on Star Wars in terms of special effect. That they could get in. And this guy was actually supposed to do Star Wars, but they couldn't get him.
Oh, bro, that would have been dope.
But yeah, so it's like the greatest science experiment ever put to film. What happens if we take milk and dye and put a camera on, right?
Crazy.
It's insane. What I like about this sequence is that it's really like science meets religion. It's walking you through Genesis 1, the creation story, but it's also doing it with a scientific perspective as well. So like the sequence starts with that quote of like, "Lord, why? Where were you?" And then the Big Bang, right? It starts. And then you see a little bit, and then you hear a quote that says, "Answer me." And then it goes to one of my favorite shots of the film, and it's a shot of like the Milky Way, but it looks like an eye. And it's like the eye of God. Oh my gosh, it's just so good. And Tori knows a lot about microbiology, so it was awesome watching this with her. I make her watch this movie all the time, like every other year at least. And it finally this time, she's like, after watching the 3-hour director's extended cut, she finally said, "Okay, There's more to this than I thought. But it took like 6 viewings for her to get it.
And with that concept, it's so interesting and beautiful that like God is really like having his hand in every single thing, because again, there are things out in the universe that definitely could end us in like an instant.
Yes.
Rogue planets, black holes, like just stars collapsing, all this stuff. But the Lord's hand is guiding us in every situation.
Yeah.
Not just the ways that we can see.
And that's what he's doing for Jack, is he's giving Jack the Job tour through creation, through the cosmos. And the way it's broken down in the making of this section is that there's 4 kind of sequences within here. There's the astral realm, which conveys like Big Bang and space, stuff like that. There's the subatomic realm, which is the contrast to that of the smallness, the intimacy of life. You see like the little DNA strands, right? All the cells forming. Then you've got the natural realm, which emphasizes nature as it is. That's when you get the dinosaurs.
Yep. Land before time, baby.
Yeah.
The dinosaur's just stepping on the other one.
Yeah, just like
It's nature.
But yeah, the dinosaur sequence is interesting because it's the way of nature and the way of grace put together. It's the nature, but also within nature, there's a capacity for grace that's built into creation.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
I got
how
that
he
too. It was pretty
communicates
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Dinosaur wouldn't do that.
Dinosaur would tear it up. But however,
However, that one moment, it was grace.
Mm-hmm. And then the final aspect of the creation sequence is actually the human. So we see Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien, we see him falling in love, the baby being born. That's actually still considered part of that sequence. But now we're seeing like the Adam and Eve. We're seeing the coming together of human beings in a really, really beautiful way.
Yeah. I think that part is my favorite scene. It is very beautiful.
I like the lava and the water crashing against each other. I thought that was a good example of nature and grace.
Those shots were taken from all over the world too.
It's real.
You know,
it's real
he
shots.
would send people like, "Hey, go to South America, go here, and just get this one shot and come back."
Even with the dinosaur scenes, they were telling him like, "Hey, like just film and then, wait,
are you joking?
No, I'm so serious. He went out and just said, "Hey, go film and just like have things in a natural sense," and then told the visual directors when they're making the dinosaurs what would they naturally be doing in a sequence like this. It's really dope. I'm not gonna lie.
I thought you were gonna say they went to Africa and they actually filmed the dinosaurs. So go out, even the dinosaur scene, they went and filmed.
They actually got real dinosaurs. They went back in time. Really filmed them.
Like, well, Joe, what are you doing?
O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, that I know very well. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them had yet existed. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139. So one of the Criterion essays called this film Natural Cubism. So we mentioned that it's trying to capture life as it is, but the editing is assembling it as a mosaic. So the framing device, if we think of God as taking Jack on a tour through his memories, it explains a lot of things about the film we're watching. It explains why it feels scattered. It might feel like a slog because we're going through someone's memories. It also explains why there's not a lot of dialogue for a lot of scenes because our memories don't remember words as well as it remembers images. And so that's what really stays with us. So each scene that we're going to see is meant to represent a different piece of what constitutes the tree of life. And you have to start with these parents here. So Mrs. O'Brien represents the matriarch archetype.
Caregiver.
The caregiver, yes, the mother. And Mr. O'Brien represents the authoritarian patriarch.
The ruler?
Yeah, I would go with the ruler there. Now, there's a book I've been reading called How God Changes Your Brain, and it talks about how your view of God alters your brain chemistry, and you become like what you worship. So both parents are a mirror reflection of who they believe God is. And we'll unpack that more, but we'll see their faults, their strengths, like they all come from their understanding of God. And that trickles down into their parenting, which I, as a father myself, find really fascinating. So Brad Pitt described his character as a father who's holding in anger and resentment over not being able to attain the American dream. He said that he's constantly comparing himself to others and it's getting him nowhere. And he's unconsciously passing that down to his son. I have so much compassion with this character because I see both my relationship with my dad in him and I see myself come out in him as well.
Heavily see my father and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this aspect of Jack where Jack wants to be seen by his father. And I relate to that so much. And I know my own kids, I see that as well. And then you have the mother with Jessica Chastain, which, by the way, this was like her first like big movie that she was ever like in.
How old is this movie?
This is 2011. She hasn't been a star for that long, but she said that this is the film that's most touched her that she's ever been a part of. So going back to Jack, he has this narration when we get to this sequence of, before I knew you, talking to God, before I believed in you, when did you first touch my heart? And then it shows the mom and dad as a couple before he was even born, which was awesome. And then there's shots of the birthing process culminating in the boy, like the little kid swimming up to the door. That's just such an awesome, like, visual of, because the child like inside of you coming, like, how do you show that in a film without like recreating as a special effect? I'm like, that is awesome. They're coming up, opening the door, Brad Pitt staring at the baby, holding the tiny feet. And then you get these slice of life moments of him growing up and then the next child coming. You see the way it's shot is it's filming like it's a child's perspective, like the shot of the stairs, and it's like everything looks big. It's shot like you're in the eyes of the child there. And the older brother, like Jack's trying to make sense of RL when he's born. He's trying to get mom's attention by throwing things.
About to hit the baby.
Hit the baby. Mom tries to shield them from seeing the pain whenever there's like something bad happening. Notice how she's trying to like shelter them from that. And the dad trying to draw lines and set boundaries for his kids.
It is an interesting concept because, like, I remember watching, like, my nephews and nieces growing up and just, like, how they are now, even with the children that we work with. Like, seeing that growth. Like, I know, like, some of the girls, like, I knew them, like, when they were, like, babies.
Yeah.
And, like, just seeing them grown now it is kind of wild. I love the feel of how everything is shown.
Yeah.
Again, it's a beautiful
documentary. It's a documentary on life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of hard for me because I don't relate to either parent or the little town that they're in. So this slice of life.
Because this is a very small town, Texas.
Yeah, open, rural. The dad, the closest I relate to the dad is when they're in the car and he's showing him around. He's saying you can't get ahead in life without doing a little bad or something.
Yeah.
A bit of trickery.
Yeah, that is something that resonates a lot. But his stern demeanor and his harshness wasn't my father.
Interesting.
And the mother, neither one do I relate to emotionally. So that anchor is not, for me personally, wasn't really there in the film, but that didn't stop me from appreciating and understanding these archetypes.
Yeah.
It's funny because like the harshness of a father and like the kind of like timid softness of a mother, that was kind of my upbringing.
Yeah.
You guys know my mom now. She's more like open and bombastic and stuff like that. But she wasn't like that growing up.
Yeah.
Because of just like that just overwhelming presence of just like a sense of like anger and just rage that comes from it. Like I remember there was one time we first moved into like our childhood home and my dad was again like telling me the boundaries that I had because a neighbor, I was playing in dirt and the neighbor came and was like, "Hey, you need to get your kid off off my side and stuff like that. You need," and he's just like, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." Like and I remember going onto that person's yard and writing like on his like his driveway with chalk, like don't mess with my dad, or like I was here or something like that.
Yeah.
And thinking that like I was defending my dad, but then I got like told off from my dad because again, now in hindsight, like he had to go apologize and all this stuff, but it was just like there wasn't like okay, I understand why you did this. It was just a straight like, okay, go upstairs so I can whoop your butt situation.
Yeah. Well, there's a scene where the father, he puts on Brahms's Fourth Symphony. Like, you remember he puts the record on, and it's like a very like dark, like the actual symphony, like this is context coming out here, but like the symphony was composed to be like this dark, violent, spiritual force that's coming upon a land. And that kind of sets the stage for like a large chunk of this movie.
Yeah.
Is the father putting that record on. And the father is like lavishing Jack, the oldest son. Like that's actually one of the only moments of affection he's actually giving him is like, when he's putting this on. But you see the mom's face is horrified. Like, what are you doing? Like, she's almost discerning there's something wrong. And then they're at the table and they're like cutting the meat and it's like raw, like it's almost like rare. It's like bloody. Like it is such a foreshadow that this is going to get really emotionally violent.
And Jack even didn't even want the hug. Like he
kind of looks like he doesn't know what to do with it. Well, and then we see that like it's just such an interesting relationship. Like the dad demands affection from his sons. He'll be like, "Do you love your father?" "Yes, sir." "Not yes, dad," right? "Not yes, father." Then Jack...
Yeah, you're going to call me, so yeah.
Yeah, and then Jack then will ask his mom, like, "Who do you love the most?" These are real things. This is what my kids say, right? Like, you have the father saying, like, "Do you love me?" I've said that to my kids. And the kids saying, "Who do you love?" Like, this is just real, like, family, like, talk. There's a prayer, there's, like, kind of like we hear a lot of voices of younger Jack, and he's saying, like, "Mother, make me good." And there's a contrast between the day with mom and the day with dad. I'm going to start crying, man, in this show. Because this just hurts so hard as a parent to see. So, like, the day with mom, they are happy. They are having fun. And they just look like they're having a great time. They're scaring her with like the little like frog or snake or whatever, right?
Lizard.
They seem free. Yeah, lizard, thank you. They seem free. They seem fun. And it shows Jack trying to like pray. Like he's trying to, like there's something about the time with mother that brings him closer to God. Then it's contrasted with the day with dad.
Yeah.
The harsh Bach organ music starts playing. Like it's just eerie. And then you see these moments where it's like they're bonding. Like the dad sprays them with the hose. And it's like, oh, that's cute. Yeah. And then the dad is like, "You're going to stand here and close this door 50 times. I'm like, it hurts because that is actually what some days with your kids are like, is really fun moments. And then the discipline. And oh, man, it just hurts because this is so true. Like, this is really what it feels like.
Yeah.
What hurts about that?
Because I see myself. Like, I've had those days. I drag them out of bed. We have fun moments. I have to lay down the law and it's harsh. And I know I'm being too harsh. Like, I'm like, I've done, and I wonder, like, how are the kids viewing day with dad versus day with mom? And it hurts because I've actually had a comment from one of my kids long time ago where I had a kid, who said like, "It's more fun when we have days with mom." But then I have another kid, a different kid, said, "I have more fun like with dad." So it's like the war of the parenting. It's not even, but it's like like our kids are already like thinking like that. And they're like 5 and 7.
Well, an interesting thing is the kids also don't really listen to mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is true too.
And so there's like a freedom and a rejoicing when dad leaves, but there's also like a disrespect and you can't tell him what to do.
Yes.
You let him walk all over you.
Yeah.
And then he starts to become like his dad. And
he said, "What do you know? You don't even stand up to him." Or
and he says like, "Your mother's naive." Like, so he badmouths the mom when she's not around.
Mm-hmm. And in her face, like, "You turn my sons against me.
You undermine everything I do."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, even the way they play is like violent. Like the hand slapping game.
Yeah.
It's a fun game, but even that, there's a little violence in it, right?
He's preparing them as soldiers almost.
Yes. He's preparing them for the harshness. There's so much pulling weeds. Like the dad just being out there pulling weeds, Jack pulling weeds. It's just harsh. You're trying to tame something. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Nick?
Well, it sounds like you have these two sides that are not evil in themselves. Like the way
No,
of
they're not
nature is not
bad.
wrong. So
Yeah.
Right.
I'm kind of wondering why you're looking at Brad Pitt and you see yourself in him and it hurts, because I don't think it's inherently wrong. These two sides are put here together. We need both these sides to rub up
Right.
against each other for a greater good. And it sounds like the way of the mom is all right and the way of the dad is all wrong, how I'm hearing it.
No, I
And
don't agree with that.
Well, but
he's
that's the
saying
thing
from
that
the-
I'm
yeah.
trying to
That's
get
how it's been
confused with.
conveyed to you.
I'm confused because I don't know why you feel a sense of badness, because these are good things happening together.
Because I think what the answer is, what you guys are alluding to, is that the way of nature, Brad Pitt, the dad, needs more grace and needs to extend that grace to his kids. And it's hard for him because of his role. The mom needs more of that way of nature. She needs to be
Right.
more firm. She needs to lay that down. And that's hard for her. And we'll talk about why in a moment. But I think it's that you see the capacity of where you go, because the dad is harsh, like to a fault at times. There are things that he does that I think he pushes it too far, and he pushes his kids away. And I know it because that's what my dad did. When my dad got too harsh, it pushed me away. And ultimately, I think it hurts because the kid is trying to navigate his relationship with God
Through his
through
father.
how he sees his parents. And that's a lot of pressure to feel as a parent. So I don't know if that explains
Yeah,
it, but that's why for me. One other thing that's interesting about the father and his relationship with God is that he's actually a worship leader, because he's the organist. He's the organ player. And so that's fascinating because he's away. Like when there's like a church service, the Job sermon, right? He's not there. He's like he's in the corner. Like he's not present in the light. He's in this dark room confined to playing the organ. He's got this very like one-on-one relationship with God. He actually, like when the service is over, that's when he goes and kneels and prays, is when everybody else is leaving. So there's already this sense that he's disconnected from, he has his own path with God that he's trying to find. And by the way, during that sermon, as the priest is talking, when he's saying that quote I mentioned at the beginning, like, is there anything in this life that will truly last? Nothing that's deathless. It's showing the stained glass of Jesus, right? So not very subtle, but what I love about it is that it's bringing in the Christ narrative. It's inviting the listeners and the audience to reflect on that and to ponder. And then we also get in this too, we get Fight Club Brad Pitt, where he says to Jack, just hit me.
Mhm.
Yes. So we get Fight Club Brad Pitt there. And that's contrasted with a sweet moment with him and Arl playing music together. When he's playing the guitar and he's at the organ and they're playing music together, and Jack is watching them and he begins to resent his dad because their relationship is more founded upon something like the way of grace, where there's something tender about it. And the relationship with the dad is like, just hit me. Come on.
Yeah.
And this is when we start to see Jack's resentment of the dad coming out, is after that scene.
This was kind of like a lie, or just a thing that I grew up believing, was that my brother was my dad's favorite because it reminded him of himself, and I reminded him of his older brother who they don't get along with. And in that image that I have of myself, that I was saying, this is how my dad sees me, resentment began to form against my dad and a little bit against my brother.
Yeah.
And so in that I can kind of relate, like, how come you're this way with him, but you're this way with me? Like, what's going on?
And it's hard because I don't fault the dad, because the dad, I think, is trying to connect with his kids in different ways.
Yeah.
I think he thinks Jack likes being roughhoused a little bit, and I think he sees the older brother, he's trying to prepare him, and the younger brother he knows is more sensitive, is not like that. And so them playing the music together is a great way for them to connect. But still, Jack misinterprets it and still is walking away with what you were kind of sharing, Jason.
I think it's very interesting. I would like to go back in a sense and be around my dad when this stuff was happening, because again, as a young child, you do misinterpret like what your and what your mother are trying to do or trying to say in it. So it's like, now as an adult, I would love to see like what actually was going on.
It causes me to have such compassion because I don't fully understand my parents.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of compassion that I have for my father now.
Yeah,
there's still
I agree.
like hesitation, but there's still compassion.
Yeah.
I
Well, that's a
understand how the
journey
world
you've been
works.
on, I feel like, this whole year, even with the podcast, different things you brought up. if you go on top of that, then there's another moment that I think is really significant is one of their friends drowns in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And the father can't save him.
Yeah.
So there's also like an aspect of like daddy couldn't help this guy, right?
And now you're introducing death into these
You're
children.
introducing death, and the mother can't shield them anymore. And the way Jack interprets that was he bad? Like, was the child bad? Like, why did that happen to him? And as he shares that, there's a shot that it cuts to of a snake lurking in the yard. Then there's the next shot is the mom cutting herself, like on accident.
Yeah.
And then there's a shot where he sees his mom dead in the casket, kind of like Snow White. So now we're getting like these bombardments of death. The serpent in the garden, the Snow White, the poison apple, right? We're getting all these shots of death.
And then he says,
and do you remember?
Yeah, if you would kill a child, you would just let anything.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I remember that.
Uh-huh. And then it shows the boy's house on fire. Another kid, his house was on fire. Then it shows the boys playing in the DDT that was like sprayed at that time, right? And then that segment ends with, why should I be good if you aren't? And I'm just like, this movie, there is just so much about the human condition that it's really trying to understand and wrestle with. So
it's a very organic way to illustrate like just confusion, just like going through like what it means to know who God is.
Right. And it's just showing it from like a kid, like an 11-year-old's perspective.
Yeah, it's very honest.
Yeah.
It gives me more compassion to the kids I work with too, because they're learning this through.
And yeah. Well, and now after that death is introduced, we kind of lean thicker into the consequences of it. So you see the dad when he's doing yard work after that. And it's interesting that the dad is always dressed nice when he's doing yard work, almost like he's trying to present himself, like trying to look good, even when he's pulling weeds. But I really see him as like embodying the curse of Adam, like toiling the ground endlessly, both literally in the garden, but metaphorically with his career. He's just toiling all the time. The boy goes up and hugs his dad and then comes alongside him and starts toiling too, starts pulling the grass almost like violently.
I think I cried at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the dad, and this is the difference between the dad and the mom here, the dad can't enjoy the grass ever. This relates to me in my dang yard. Like the dad can't just be present in anything. He has to work. And the contrast is that the mom, there's a shot shortly after that where the mom is in the grass and she's like, the sprinklers are out and she's just walking through the sprinklers, touching dirt, touching the grass, right? And she's just enjoying it. And the dad sees nature as something to conquer and perfect, and the mom touches the grass and the nature because she sees it as something to enjoy. And then it talks about the dad, he's barbecuing in the yard, and he talks about the line of the composer. And he says, you know what he said? It could be better.
Yeah.
And then he says, like, I'm not done yet. This dad is just crying out to be seen. He wants his toil to be seen. He wants to be recognized so badly for what he does. He's longing for that approval.
Yeah.
And you see it with his kids. Like, he's trying to get the kids to say something to him.
The one quote is, I remember when it kind of focuses to him for a little bit. It says, I wanted to be loved because I was great.
Yes.
A big man. Now I'm nothing. Look, the glory around, trees, birds, dishonored it all and didn't notice the glory.
Yeah.
Foolish man. So it's not like this is lost upon him. He's been ruminating on this.
Yeah. And that when we get to the end, that quote, I think, really hits hard when we get to the final scene. Yeah, that's so good because he's after something. He's seeking. He's not given up, but there's something he's missing as well. But I think probably the hardest scene to watch is when they're at the dinner table and Arl says to the dad, be quiet.
Please.
Oh,
please.
Yeah.
And the dad snaps.
Yeah.
He breaks. He throws him out of the house. And he continued, like the way he eats his dinner is like so violent. Like he's sitting there like cutting the meat. Again, that violence from earlier.
Because he told his son earlier, like, hey, don't say anything if you don't have anything important to say.
And that's him saying something important. And that just, it sets him off. And then there's a scene at the sink with the mother. And and he's like holding, like the way he's like just holding her, it's like affectionate, but also like stop. Like I can't stand.
No,
it's so many things.
Fighting back.
She's fighting.
Yeah,
Yes, you see the way of nature and the way of grace are fighting. Nature's trying to dominate that grace. And then he has that line: "You turn my own kids against me. You undermine everything I do."
Yeah.
And then Jack is watching this. And there's a scene of Jack is skipping around the room, but it's not looking at Jack. The camera is on his shadow. It's only showing what his shadow's doing. And then it cuts to a shot of like this weird moment of like a clown being drowned. It's like,
I don't remember any of that, actually.
Yeah.
No, this one, I couldn't figure this one out.
Yeah.
It's this clown at a carnival, and he's just doing a bunch of weird stuff.
Uh-huh.
Probably freak out any kid. And he's in the dunk tank, and there's a shot of him just like his
like he can't get out.
Face is kind of just crying out or laughing underwater. And then there's this weird scene of him in the attic with a bike and a really oddly tall man, and he's just driving in circles. Scratch my head at that.
There's all like this innocence being crushed. The shadow is taking over. And then when the dad goes away on that trip, all of a sudden, like
everyone is so happy.
Everybody's like relieved. Like the weight is finally out of the house.
I relate to that moment.
Yeah.
Too, Heike.
And it's heartbreaking when they're happy
it really is.
that dad is gone.
Yeah.
And there's in the extended cut, there's actually a hurricane that comes while the dad's not there. Really great scene where they have to prep for the hurricane. The hurricane comes and they have to like Jessica Chastain. Like I highly recommend the extended cut because it fleshes out the characters a lot more, especially the mom. You see a lot more of her faults in the extended cut, but you also see how she has to pick up and be a bit more like the dad when dad's gone. And that's when the hurricane comes, she does that.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't really get to see like the negative side effects of what the mother is doing in a sense. Like it's that one scene where he lashes out, Jack lashes out on her because of like the behavior that she does. But I feel like this movie kind of villainized the father in a sense as well. And Nick, you're right. You need both to actually like properly parent.
Yeah, it's a balance. And I don't know if it's the conversation or the film. It does skew
the father
very negatively towards the father.
Yeah.
I think the extended cut is more balanced. But I agree. Like in the theatrical cut, I do think it skews towards the mom, like favoring her. Definitely.
Because even
in the theatrical cut.
Thinking about like my life growing up, that I had to turn that narrative of villainizing my father because my father's human and knowing the stuff I know now, I can understand why like certain actions were taken and knowing him or his upbringing, I can understand the choices he's made. Right. But I don't ever want to villainize like people going through stuff like this.
Yeah.
There is a sense of that it is wrong, but they are not villains because of it. They're just humans.
That's good. Now, when we get to this point where things are like this, the boy quotes Romans 7:15, where he says, "I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate." So, and then there's a scene of like the boys stealing fruit from a garden, which is similar to, there's a famous scene in this book. If you've ever read Augustine's Confessions, this is a huge, like what the tree of life is kind of doing. What Augustine does in Confessions is he goes through, it's sick.
Yeah.
He goes through his life and he's trying to make sense of his memories and how God was moving through it. And there's a scene where Augustine steals these pears as a boy. And it's like him recognizing his own sinfulness for the first time. And like, why did I didn't need the pears. I stole it because I wanted it. Because I wanted to be seen as doing this. I wanted to be perceived, right? So it's really deep. And you see kind of like a nod to there as well with that scene. And then there's a scene where he says, "Help me not to lust." And then he says, "Are you watching me?" Like to God, right? Yeah. And then in this scene that happens a few moments later, he breaks into a girl's house of one of his classmates that he was following. That starts off as this kind of cute, innocent, like, oh, the boy, like he thinks he's cute. She's cute, right? But then it turns into him going in the house. Yeah. It keeps showing like this. The camera keeps panning to this curtain that keeps moving in the wind, like dancing. Mm-hmm. Almost like God is there watching.
Yeah.
And then he takes out some undergarments, holds it up to the light, and the camera keeps panning back to that curtain, blowing, like to that window, like as if like God is seeing it. And then he has to take the undergarments and he buries it in the river out of guilt. And he's trying to like, it's almost like he's trying to cleanse himself of what he feels like defiled. And then he starts hitting a tree really aggressively. And the mother just stares like, huh? But Jack can't look her in the eye. Mm-hmm. It's like that sense of like beauty has been tarnished. Like love has turned into lust. And then the mother walks away. And when she leaves, he finds a swing and tries to ride on the swing. Like he's trying to get back that innocence. And then he goes to the mom and says, I can't talk to you. Mm-hmm. And then she keeps staring at him and he's like, don't look at me. And then he says, what have I done? He gets out of the bath. He wraps a towel, like when she's walking by, wraps a towel, closes the door of that shame, of that nakedness. Mm. It is like one of the best like losses of innocence like I've ever seen portrayed in a film.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh, and then the dad comes back. And like he's had this experience apart from the father, and now the father comes back and it amplifies it even more. This is where the tension's really building.
He's starting to talk back to his dad.
There's this hatred, yes, where Brad Pitt will say, like, you will not call me daddy, you will call me father. He's taking away the Abba. He's taking away the opportunity for intimacy when his son actually needs that connection most.
Yeah.
And then he sees the dad under the car trying to do like a repair.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna drop that thing on him. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I was like,
he wanted to.
He wanted to, and then there's a cannon that goes off, and he says the words, "Please God, kill him." Mm-hmm. It's so subtle, like in terms of just like it's not like a lot of attention's drawn to it, because then it just kind of keeps going. But are these not the things that we experience as human beings? And then we get to like the Cain and Abel moment of the film where they're playing with a gun, Jack and Arl, in the woods. And Arl says to Jack, embodying the way of grace, I trust you. And then we see that Arl puts his finger in front of the gun and Jack lets it go.
Yeah.
And when Arl runs off in pain, Jack shows no remorse at all.
I thought he did.
Not at first. It's just that emotionless, like, stare.
That one was personal for me.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm the oldest brother. I don't know if it was my own inadequacies or just lack of self-confidence, but there were times where I was just mean to him in a trickery sort of way. Like, hey, go do this, or, oh, hey, how about you do this? And then I would just hurt him.
Yeah.
And it damaged that relationship between us, and I'm not proud of it, and I didn't realize till afterwards, like, hey, this is deeply not okay.
What did you think, Jason, of what happened next then when Jack tries to make up with his brother and give the kiss, and the brother wipes every kiss away?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, he goes up to the brother to try to like make up, and he'll give him a kiss. And he'll do that. He'll wipe the kiss away.
Okay.
Every time.
No, I don't remember that. I remember when he's saying, hit me now.
Yes, let's get even. That's the next thing he says there.
It's almost like he like is longing for atonement.
He's longing for atonement.
And his brother doesn't do it.
No.
He keeps trying to get him to flinch, and he's playful, but he doesn't actually hit him back.
And he finally just says sorry. He owns up to it. And that's just an amazing way. Then after he says it, he kind of looks down. And then Arl puts his hand on him. Yeah. Like the way of grace is extending that hand. Yeah, and then it's at this moment, this is a key moment here. It's at this moment that the voiceover of Jack says, I see it was you. Always you were calling me. Mm-hmm. And that's the moment where he felt closest. That's in his memory. That's his aha moment of like, that's when I saw God.
Yeah.
was in the love of the brother. It's like the Joseph extending forgiveness to his brothers, right?
Yeah, that was the grace in that moment. Yeah.
Yes. And then we're starting to wrap up the movie here. The dad gets fired from he's going to, right?
It's either he takes a job nobody wants or he gets fired.
Exactly. And that's when the quote you mentioned earlier, Jason, comes in, kind of like his confession there. And then as we start wrapping this up, Jack says, Father, mother, always you wrestle inside me, always you will. When we're near the end of them getting ready to move, and the father's not perfect, like he's waking up to something, but he's still like a little harsh, like, hey, get this in the car, right? But there's a moment where the dad and son, where Jack and Brad Pitt, where they embrace, they understand that they're the same. And the father says to him, you're all I want to have. And that's like the big moment where finally Jack gets to hear some sort of affirmation, and the father gets to finally like say something, and it lands there.
Jack is like, yeah, we're the same.
Like, like I'm more like you than I am her. And
Yes.
it almost feels like it's the adult Jack saying this through himself as a child.
Yeah.
Like that's something an adult would say.
Yeah.
But he
recognizes him that
very
stuff.
As a kid he's very like, I don't know if mature is the right way, but like the way he talks is very aware.
Yeah.
That was an interesting point.
Yeah.
The kind of scene wraps up with a final monologue from the mother where she says the only way to be happy is to love. Unless you love, your life will flash by. And that actually is a paraphrase of a quote from this book, probably my favorite fictional book, The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. If you have time to read 750 pages, it'll change your life.
Is it an audiobook?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's a quote in Dostoevsky where the famous quote is, brothers, have no fear of men's sin. Love a man even in his sin, for that is the semblance of divine love and is the highest love on earth. Love all of God's creation, the whole and every grain of sand in it. Love every leaf, love every ray of God's light, love the animals. That one's for you, Joe. Love the planets, love everything. If you love everything, you will perceive the divine mystery in things. Once you perceive it, you will begin to comprehend it better every day, and you will come at last to love the whole world with an all-embracing love. And that leads to the final moment in the film. Revelation 21, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And Terrence Malick in the screenplay describes the ending as the great tribulation of humanity. It's creation coming to an end, but the soul becomes reconciled with creator and creation here. So adult Jack wakes up from what we just watched, essentially. He wakes up from his vision, or his, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. His dream, his prophetic dream. And it shows him going in an elevator, and then there's a cave. It shows like you're going up, ascending a cave. Then it shows a shot of moving through a narrow gate. So it's like, okay, what are we doing here, right? These are all signs of ascension, and there's some woman that's like leading. We then see the earth getting annihilated. We see this meteor that's about to come and wipe out the earth.
How did I miss that part?
It's very subtle. It's don't look up right there.
No,
don't look up here. So there's a shot of the earth like an eye eclipsed, and the word, like that eye shot again, and then it has the words follow me. The older Jack in the desert sees younger Jack, his younger self. And there's more images of ascension. There's a ladder. There's coming up out of a pit. There's dead bodies. The camera moves from dead bodies on the ground, showing them like up to the sky. Then there's people lifting each other up, almost like they're helping raise each other up from the dead, right? Then adult Jack, after moving through all these images and visuals of ascension, he finally makes it to the beach, and he surrenders. He falls to his knees. He sees the glory. And I get teary-eyed watching this scene because the parents see the son. They see Arl. They're reunited with their son who died. There's also a shot of these masks that are like drowning in the water, which I think is awesome because all the pretenses are gone now. People are who they are. Then I think also this moment really got Tori, and it got me too, because I never really fully felt the weight of it until this time. There's the mother And there's these other women, and I think they're angels. They're supposed to be angels, and they're surrounding the mother. And it's basically what they're doing is they're trying to help the mom give the son back to God. And so they're surrounded by like this white light. And that's when she has the voiceover about letting him go. Because now, like, we're at the end, we're in eternity.
Yeah.
And now the son, she releases the son. She reunites with the son on the beach and then releases. And you see, like, all the relation, like the dad makes it. And I think that's awesome that the dad, there's healing. He sees the glory. The shot of the dad hugging the adult Jack.
Yeah.
And them walking side by side like they understand each other now. It's just so good. The scene of adult Jack walking up to the mom and the mom is crying because she's like, you're here, like you've made it. You see it now. All of them being reunited with the son that died. I mean, it's beautiful. And if it didn't come across in the film here, Sean Penn, his job is he's an architect, the older Jack. And so the question is what is he going to build his life upon? That's something that I think is in the screenplay with Malick. And the final image is an answer to that question, is it shows the final shot of the movie. Do you guys remember what the final shot is?
It's the bridge.
It's the bridge. And what's it a bridge between?
The two worlds.
The two worlds, the two ways, exactly. That's how the Sparkline is resolved, is Jack has found the bridge.
That's cool.
He's found the way to connect these things. And then after the bridge, it fades out to that light of God, and then it fades out there. So in the screenplay, Malick writes of the ending that Jack is now left with the question, will he give himself fully to this new way of life? And I believe he asks us if we will do the same.
Yeah.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. John 1:1-5.
So what are your thoughts on the ending, kind of final thoughts on Tree of Life as we wrap it up?
I wasn't understanding the ending until you broke it down to me right now. I was very confused. I thought he was just, I guess, like understanding his past, like his mother's and father's actions, and it's all like kind of a memory thing.
Yeah.
But you breaking it down like that, it's more profound. Like it's like, wow, that it's dope.
Yeah.
I guess it could be seen as like him reconciling with them within his mind and within his past, because I was kind of like getting that. But
Yeah.
I figured it was
absolutely.
the afterlife. But
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I thought this was a very honest film. Just the thoughts of who is God, and even childlike thoughts that we might have now, even just like, hey, you let this happen. Why?
Right.
Who are you? Like, I can't see you. And the other thoughts, like, where do you live? Can you see me?
Yeah.
I thought this was very honest about our wrestlings with who God is and how we see him through the heads of our parents.
Yeah.
And how we make of the world around us.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was pretty cool. I think Nick was right in that this is a movie you have to almost give yourself to. Like, you have to like dedicate a time to it. Like,
Right. You do.
Like, okay, this is not a movie. All right, this is going to entertain me. It's all right. What am I going to see by watching this movie?
Yeah.
I definitely didn't see it that way the first time, and it was
It's like a fine wine. You just got to kind of, you know.
I'll see if I drink it again.
Nick, what final thoughts?
I like that the inner child was leading him at the end.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, they're the same shots.
Yeah.
So he's walking alone in the beginning, and then his younger self is in front of him.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like the part when I first watched it, when he meets his mom on the beach as an older man and his mom is younger. That was really weird. That was an emotional moment for me to interact with my mom, who I've had the most trouble with. To see her younger, my mind couldn't even fathom that.
Yeah.
So that moment was cool. But I kind of understood what was happening as I was watching it. But no, it's hard though, because I didn't have a spiritual life when I was young. So I never asked those questions like, where are you?
Yeah.
Can you see me? The whole structure of it wasn't my relationship.
Right.
But that's it though. I mean, it's really cool. It's a really cool film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can,
It's an
say something,
experience.
too.
Yeah.
I think the two most profound moments that I've had with understanding God of who he is, or two different times. When I was really young, and I remember I was out at a family member's house, and it was just me, and I was very depressed. I think this is around the time like all my siblings left the house. I didn't really feel like I had anybody in my life. And I went outside and in the rain, like looked up and screamed like to the sky, like, God, where are you? Like, do you even care? Why am I even here? What am I supposed to be doing? And then years later, there was another moment again where I think I've told you guys this story, but I was in Oklahoma. Again, a very depressed season of my life. This is after my parents were divorced. Again, like I felt like no one was around me. I felt like no one saw me. No one, God didn't care. And I was ready to do something to myself that was irreversible. But I heard, and I stick to it like for the rest of my days. I heard him say, I'm not done with you yet.
Yeah.
I have things for you, and I love you.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I didn't make this up because I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And I know it's not me. So I'll trust you. Yeah, literally, like I'll trust you. And from that, it's literally just been a trusting experience and figuring out.
Well, that's what faith is, right?
Yeah.
You know, religion is like something that man constructs to try to make sense of the divine, some make sense of the spiritual. But really with us, it's a relationship, and it's a relationship that is built on that trust, right? We trust God and his goodness. And that's a journey that we're on. And so that's what we have to decide, is what is the role of God. And I think the Tree of Life brings out a lot of these questions and reflections and conversations that we can have. So all of us on this podcast, faith is really important to us. It really does matter. And so I want to be able to encourage you that wherever you're at on your journey in terms of like religion, spirituality, faith, Tree of Life is a wonderful film to help think through and meditate on these ideas. And even the books I recommended earlier, like Augustine's Confessions and The Brothers Karamazov, those are both excellent books in that regard. And even in my own experience, and my deconstruction was turning away from God, and my reconstruction began when I went to this church. I didn't have a church at the time, but I went to this church and I took communion, and I just felt the most powerful experience of just God revealing himself, that I am with you and I love you. I am here with you. I am for you. And that sense of love that I believe is who God is, that's what I operate and live my life out of. And so you probably heard a lot of us on the podcast talk about our faith and really discuss the lens that we see the world through, being able to see Christ in all these different films, regardless of what genre and how diverse the storytelling is. But this is a film where that really brings that to the forefront. And so I highly recommend it if you're interested in those deeper theological questions. And once again, check out All Things Narrative if you want to learn about any of our coaching workshops, the Tree of Life, anything that we do that you want to become a better storyteller. That is what we are here to help you do. And of course, as this podcast is all about, not just telling that story, but also living that story meaningfully.
And again, as we're wrapping up this new season of this year with our podcast, I've actually wrapped up my series from my stop motion films this year as well. And we're starting a brand new one we'll see what time next year, maybe February, maybe March. But we are starting off with the film Avengers Assemble. So look forward to that.
Whoop, whoop. So thank you guys. I'm going to end with this final quote, and we will be back next year for a new season of the podcast with lots of exciting films to talk about.
Okay.
So it's going to be good. But I hope all of you out there have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And I'm going to end with this quote from Augustine. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. You never go away from us, yet we have difficulty in returning to you. Come, Lord, stir us up and call us back. Kindle and seize us. Be our fire and our sweetness. Let us love. Let us run.